people of all kinds, whoever you are, everyone's welcome to this dojo. It's your boy Peter here, aka Peter Freako 10, baby. Bringing you guys another episode of the Movie Review Show, where the good movies are always reviewed. Okay, back into our movie review. Alrighty. Now, I've talked a lot about action films led by men who have made their mark on the genre, from the likes of Van Damme, Seagal, and Stallone, which more of those guys will be coming in the future. But now we enter the 2000s, and there comes a time for a new dog to enter the pack. And that new dog would be none other than Jet Li, baby, who, despite having his start in Hong Kong with some film goers actually having to dig real deep to see him in action, the casual moviegoer never got to see him as a leading man in an action film, and what he was capable of to warrant the stars and stripes that other action movie stars have had. Well, that changes today, because today's film shows him out in the ring. And what film is that, you may be asking? That film is none other than Romeo Must Die. But is it good enough for Jet Li to warrant being placed among the greats? Well, grab your keys, head to the nearest gym, learn some karate, aikido, or whatever moves Jet Li knows, get some Aaliyah music going, and let's talk Romeo Must Die. Now, Romeo Must Die, this was a film made in the year 2000. It's directed by a guy named Andrzej Bartkowiak. I could be saying his name wrong. Andrzej Bartkowiak? But nevertheless, that aside, this is his film debut. But before this, he actually worked mostly as a cinematographer on various films like Twins, Speed, Species, Jade, and even Dante's Peak. And after this, he was working on a film called Exit Wound, which reunites him with actors from this film. But the idea for this film actually started at Warner Brothers with producer Joel Silver, or as a friend of mine calls him, Joel Fat Fuck Silver. He was noticing the lack of martial arts action films in the States that were new and fresh, and was looking to bring new talent to the limelight. While that was going on, he had come across Jet Li, who was making it big in the Hong Kong States with his assortment of action films. Noticing his popularity in that area, he made the decision to cast him as the villain in Lethal Weapon 4, with Jet Li looking at this as an opportunity to make his first step into American cinema. And if that got him the recognition he needed, this would upgrade him into feature film lead territory. Despite not having the best reputation with critics compared to the other three, it was a hit for the studio, and Jet Li's performance was praised by critics. Because of that, Warner Brothers and Joel looked for a script he could work with. And that same year, Rush Hour was actually released in theaters, and seeing the success of New Line's work on that film, Joel set out to emulate what worked in that film. He was also looking to set up an idea for a film that showcased Jet Li's presence not just as an action movie hero, but also a romantic lead. He worked on the story with a guy named Mitchell Kapner, who a few months before this, or a month before this, had written The Whole Nine Yards, and he came up with the idea of an action movie version of Romeo and Juliet, while not being a direct adaptation of that source, as they looked to modernize it by making the two families fighting black and Chinese. Working off that idea, he brought in two screenwriters, Eric Berndt of Surviving the Game and Virtuosity, and John Jarrell, who before this only worked on a direct-to-video movie called Restraining Order with Eric Roberts. To bring the story to life, working off the idea from there, they decided to take the core concept that Joel had given them and give it this touch of hip-hop culture and R&B culture. Once Joel approved the script, all they had to do was pick a director. And this is where Andreas comes into the picture. As him and Joel had already had history with him having been a cinematographer on Lethal Weapon 4, and because him and Jet Li got along while making the film, and because Andreas was looking to make his transition into directing, he agreed to take the directing job. Once on board, he was awarded a budget of $25 million, and they got their cast together and began to get to work on the film. Despite the film taking place in Oakland, the movie was shot in Vancouver. In fact, one of the places they shot in, the golf course, was actually the same golf course they shot the Bob Barker fight in Happy Gilmore. And with particular action scenes, Jet Li himself actually gave inputs on ideas for scenes. And for the effects, the team went to great lengths to make sure that a lot of effects were achieved with wire work, with Jet Li doing a lot of his own stunts practically and being a master of his own work. And a lot of the fight scenes being done on practical sets, with some areas having to turn to CGI to enhance some areas of the fights. The one thing that needs to be talked about is that while making the film, the visual team also had a new trick up their sleeve, and that being the X-ray effect that they were excited to show off, which is when a fight scene happens, it goes into this sort of X-ray effect to showcase the damage Jet Li did to an opponent. Mannix, who were no stranger to Joel Silver, being that they worked with him on The Matrix, looked at this as an opportunity to get across the pain that Jet Li was inflicting on his opponents. It also allowed Joel Silver to get across how CGI could be used to enhance Hong Kong fighting. And I think the audience agreed with this because when shooting Wrap, they screened the film with the original intent of it being used only one time. But the audience loved it so much, they went back and incorporated it into more scenes. Along with that, there was also some question raised about the original ending, which they had to go back and reshoot, which also got a great response from people. But after all that, the movie was released on March 24, 2000, and much like Road to El Dorado, it was another victim to Aaron Brockovich's reign, opening to number 2 at the box office and grossed over $18 million in a single weekend. And while that may not seem like much, by mid-April, the film made over $52 million at the box office. So it managed to make over its budget, and we'll see more on the final result later. I'll put like what else it made by May. But it was a hit for Warner Brothers, even with Aaron Brockovich topping the box office. I guess people were hungry for more action movies, and seeing how well Jet Li did with Lethal Weapon 4, they were starving to see what he would offer as a lead, and the box office showed. Despite the cash rolling in, the film received negative to mixed reviews, as critics praised the film for Jet Li's performance, as well as Aaliyah, with some praise going to the action, as on Rotten Tomatoes, the film carries a 34%. Critics criticized the film for its convoluted story and the use of CGI in some action scenes, something of which Robert Ebert pointed out in his star-and-a-half review. Despite this, the audience seemed to enjoy it, as on that side, it has a 61%, on IMDb it has a 6.1 out of 10. And I agree with the audience. I do like this film. It's not up to par with, say, some of the greats like A Hard Target or Under Siege or Die Hard or even The Last Boy Scout I'd put above this. But it's a solid action film that I find to be a great start for Jet Li. And I thought it was a unique take on the Romeo and Juliet story in an action film. So I really got to give the film that. I'll get into why later though. But getting into the cast, like you said, you got Jet Li and Aaliyah, the singer herself, and this would be her film debut. You have Isaiah Washington from Dead Presidents and Out of Sight with George Clooney and Jennifer Lopez. Russell Wong from New Jack City, DMX. Before this, he did a film called Belly, which I've never seen. Delroy Lindo from Malcolm X and Get Shorty and The Cider House Rules. D.B. Woodside, who's done mostly TV work. Henry O, who's done mostly Japanese stuff. Anthony Anderson, who's going to be in Me, Myself, and Irene. Nothing really noteworthy at this point. Now, the plot of Romeo Must Die is basically we find out that there are these two families that have this feud going, much like Romeo and Juliet, those being the O'Days, led by Isaac O'Day, played by Delroy Lindo, and the Sings, led by Chu, played by Henry O, despite trying to keep the peace going. And at the beginning, we see this kid named Poe, who is part of the Singh family, who at the beginning is at a club that a rival gang is at, and despite calming a fight between the two families, the next day he is found dead, hung on a flagpole in a neighborhood. While that is going on, we meet his brother Han, played by Jet Li, who at the moment that this is all going down, he is in jail and he gets word on his brother's death. So he breaks out and heads back to town to figure out who is responsible for his brother's death. Meanwhile, we see Isaac, who gets word about Poe, and fearful they might blame him and his family, and as retaliation, they may come after his daughter, Trish, played by Aaliyah. So he puts a security guard on her named Maurice, played by Anthony Anderson, in charge of babysitting her, much to her dismay. But it turns out that she runs into Han, and she begins to help him in his his investigation and figuring out who killed his brother. All the while, the war between the two families begins to heat up as it is discovered that there could be a mole in both families who's escalating this fight further. So now the both are in the middle of this war while also trying to figure out who is responsible for the death of his brother. Will Han be able to figure out those responsible for the death of his brother, or will him and Triss be involved in a battle that will be too big to stop at this point? Romeo Must Die works for me because it has an interesting concept. I like the idea of a sort of action movie version of Romeo and Juliet. I thought it was a different setup for a movie, and a good way to enforce the conflict going on between the two families. And it's not really often you see this sort of movie, if you want to count the Romeo and Juliet with Leonardo DiCaprio. That's not really a movie that's action heavy as opposed to this one. But I appreciate the film doesn't follow the story beat for beat, and it does take some creative risks, like what the film reveals about why the feud is happening. And I like the feel of the film. I like the 2000s urban vibe they gave the film. I thought it made the film stand out from the pack. It didn't come off as annoying or gimmicky. It's really used as a backdrop for the film, and I thought it was really well implemented. Now, with that said, the only thing I will say about the script that I thought could be a bit better is a little bit more of the love story could have been a bit more expanded upon, because Jet Li and Aaliyah, it really doesn't feel it's there as the film wants it to be. It doesn't feel as touched upon, and it doesn't feel like enough time is used to build them up as a couple as the film wants you to believe, as there isn't enough moments dedicated to them, and it could have really been expanded on that a little bit more. With that said, though, the film moves at a fast pace. The story gets going around every corner the film takes, and it has fun with the concept. And for a first-time director, Andrzej did very well. His directing's really solid. Visually, I think it's got a very distinct look and tone to it from other action films of the year before, even The Matrix. I like the urban style and the R&B-like atmosphere rolled into one in this film. I think he has a great sense of flair and energy in his direction, especially in the action portions. I like how he shoots the X-ray visual, which I appreciate for how it was used, beyond being a gimmick. And just the fact that he insisted on a lot of the action being done on practical sets and using wires. I really think it really made the action really just fun to watch and really authentic. I know a lot of friends of mine really have said that it looks noticeable sometimes. They're not the biggest wire fu guys, because there's some shots when you see them holding back it like this and kind of going like this. They're trying to hold the wire while they CGI it out. But I could forgive it because the action is really well done and beautifully shot cinematography-wise. And just how the film showcased Jet Li's talents as a martial artist and the speed he has, like the scene at Aaliyah's apartment and Anthony Anderson, where he has his boys block his way from getting out, and he fights them through the garden, breaking Anthony Anderson's tooth, pulling the coat over a guy's head. Hell, one guy even gets his pants pulled down. Or later on when he has the fight with Russell Wong and he's pushing him into this burning fire pit, he's trying to hold it back and you see it's burning his hands. It looked practical, and just like he was able to get and everyone else involved. Even just Aaliyah, like the one scene when she has the fight with the girl on the motorcycle. I thought he really gets a lot out of the cast and putting them in these set pieces. And even if there was a stunt double, I think he does a great job hiding it. On top of that, the action is not relying on shaky cam, so you can see the action with a clear and steady shot. The only thing about the film on a technical side, I'll be honest here, is the score. The score is really nothing to run home about. It's by two people named Stanley Clarke and Timbaland, which is crazy because Stanley Clarke did the score for Passenger 57, and that's a great score. Guess everyone has their flukes. Timbaland I never heard of. I guess he's probably friends with Aaliyah probably why he got involved, but the score is just really unmemorable and just generic in some areas. I do like the licensed music, though, I'll say that. I like the Aaliyah songs, I like DMX, so I like some of the soundtrack to it. But with that said, it is a well-made film, and I think for a first-time director, Andreas really gave it his all and succeeded. The acting is also solid, with Jet Li being the MVP of the movie. I think he does a great job. I like the character of Han. I can see why Joel Silver saw talent in him, because he does have the screen presence of a young Jackie Chan or an action star from the 90s. He's got presence, he's got charisma, and he's got that look of intensity when you know an action scene will go down, like the moments between him and Anthony Anderson and their back and forth, like when he's face to face with him, he's got him tied up and he calls him a meatball. That got a good laugh out of me. The moments with him and Aaliyah, he is a bit rusty there, being that he's not used to working with more romantic set pieces and romantic sort of themes, and I think those moments could have been a bit better. I definitely think that when he's with Aaliyah, because he has Aaliyah to play off her, it keeps his performance in line. And on top of that, there's just some moments with him where it feels a bit awkward, and I think it could have been a bit better there. But when he's in the action portions, I think he does a lot better there than he does in the more romantic set pieces. I do think he will get better when I see more of his films, but here, just nothing to run home about. I will say, though, Aaliyah herself does great. I like the rebellious attitude she gives her character, but you could get behind her because you see she's a good person working in this sort of cafe and music store. She gets along with the kids in the area in her own community, and she has this cute city girl outlook to her, and like Jet Li's character, she does a good job getting into the action portion, shows she can handle herself well. I do think, though, unlike Jet Li, I do think she has a leg over him in the terms of the more drama-centered moments, especially in the moments between her and Delroy Lindo. And when she is with Jet Li, she's working with the best with what she can with him and kind of guiding him along. So, I gotta give it all to Aaliyah. Aaliyah's very good. Speaking of which, Delroy Lindo, I think he's great in as well, playing the father of Aaliyah, who means well for his family as well as his daughter, but he keeps having to revert himself into fighting. I thought he delivered that well, sincerely and likably, so you could understand why his character was in that state and was easy to get behind him. Isaiah Washington, I'll say, played a good worm and a good snake. The way he delivers that manipulative side was also well done, especially when you see him with Delroy Lindo, as well as various members of the cast. His final battle, though, I'll be honest, had me dying. When you see him running with the briefcase and he's trying to catch the chopper, the way it looked, it was just so funny how they did it there. So it was probably the way he runs. I don't know why, but how he's hanging off the chopper after running too, just that kept me dying. But for what he was, he played a good snake. Other actors, you got DMX as this guy who runs this nightclub the group visits. He does fine for what he has to do. Henry Wong as this guard for the Singh family. I actually liked him. I was really impressed with him, and I was able to handle himself, especially during the action portions. I thought he himself had a good presence as well. D.B. Woodside, he's fine. Not given much to say. He's the brother of Aaliyah, but not really much to say. He does the best he can with what he's given. Anthony Anderson, I'll say, I will guiltily say this. I got some laughs out of him, even though I could understand why some people find him annoying, but I got a good laugh out of him, especially the scene when he's playing video games and he wins the game and he's stuffing the nuts in his mouth. Oh, these nuts in your mouth. Or the whole pizza's so good you want to slap your mama. That got a good laugh out of me. And lastly, Henry O, who does well as well. His whole thing as the villain does feel very last minute. Like, there's not as much explored with him as I think there could have been. I like the twist, but I don't think it's as built upon as it could be, especially because the final itself does feel a bit rushed between the two and really out of place from the rest of the movie's tone, which is more fun, and this moment here just sticks out like a sore thumb. Like, maybe incorporate more of a fight between the two, instead of what they actually do with the ending, or make Russell Wong the main villain and manipulating him, and then he goes back and is the one who shoots him, because he has more presence than Henry O. Have it where he betrays him and he's the one he fights at the end, because the movie definitely shoots its wad after that fight with Russell Wong, and it really doesn't reach the high of that moment. But for what Henry has to do, I don't want to say he's bad, because it's not a bad performance. It's just really not much to say and is as memorable. But besides that, the acting is fairly solid. Like I said, the effects in the film are really good. Like, the set pieces are really good. The effects look great. Saw a lot of practical fighting in the film. It's not an incredibly violent film like, let's say, The Last Boy Scout or even Hard Target, but there's some good fisticuff moments and some painful moments in terms of effects. There's some great usage of practical explosions and sets and some models, like the scene when they blow up the barbershop, or the fight in the building where he's fighting Anthony Anderson and his goons and he's swinging around the fire hose. That I thought looked really cool, and he ends the fight where they fall out of a window and on a car. That I actually thought was a pretty cool stunt. And while there are some usages of CGI in there, it's not as overly relied upon as some make it seem. So all around, very solid in terms of effects. Just don't go in expecting like it's going to be complete CGI like Roger Ebert's review was. It's teeny tiny portions of that. But besides that, I've touched upon the cons of this film, but now let's get into the bottom line. And bottom line is this. There's some people that are going to look at Romeo Must Die as a stunt show. But with that said, it's a fun action ride that shows Jet Li's talents as an action star. And it's just a slam-bang good time that I highly recommend to anyone who is looking to crown the new member of the action movie pact. So if you're looking for a fun action, hip 2000s film, I highly recommend you check out Romeo Must Die. It may not be The Matrix, but it's great in its own way. So when it comes down to it, the final rating I give Romeo Must Die is an 8.8 out of 10. It would get a 9 if the final battle was just a little bit more memorable. With that said, it's still enough to earn the Alexandra seal of approval. Definitely a fun ride for anybody looking for a great action film. So, yeah. That is my review for Romeo Must Die. And next time, I will be doing a review of a few other things. I managed to beat Tony Hawk Pro Skater recently, so you'll be getting a review of that. I'm also going to be working on a review of American Psycho, Turok 2, and also Shanghai Noon. So be on the lookout for that. And I am going to continue my work on Pokemon the first movie. I'm also going to do a review. I'm surprised I've actually never reviewed this film, but now I know that I have to, especially with the second one coming out for Memorial Day. Mission Impossible. We'll be talking about the first one here. Gonna do a review of this one. You guys will see my thoughts on this soon. So, yeah. But with that said for right now, I'll see you guys later. Let me know in the comments below what you guys think of Romeo Must Die. Do you guys enjoy it? Do you really feel that Jet Li is to be crowned the new action movie king of the pact? I would love to know you guys' thoughts down below. Be sure to rate, comment, and subscribe, and I'll see you guys next time. Bye.